We're back here on Ceraulo Sports Talk with me, Joe Ceraulo. You're tuned into the Believe Hour on Sports Map Radio. And joining the show next, he's a former New York Jet. I'm lucky enough to call him a good friend, but he is also the new host of I Am Athlete Tonight over on Mad Dog Radio. It's my man, Douzable. Thanks so much for joining the show.
Of course, Joe, man. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, it's great to talk to you. Congratulations on the new show, my man. You are killing it over on Sirius XM.
Man, appreciate you, man. We have a great time. You know, as Joe said, I'm the new host of I Am Athlete Tonight on Sirius XM Mad Dog Radio Channel 82. So tune in daily, 7 to 9, Monday through Friday. That's 7 to 9 Eastern PM. Me, Adam Pac-Man Jones, LaShawn Shady McCoy, Brandon Marshall, Antoine Walker, Omar Kelly, who is a renowned NFL columnist, also has been a beat writer for the Miami Dolphins for over 15 years. Auntie Chantel, who was a part of the original WNBA, the first year that they came into exception. She was drafted that year, but is better known now as, as a trick shot master, does a lot of stuff on TikTok. She'll be on the show. Brandon Flowers, who played a lot of years in the NFL as a cornerback, will be on the show. So we try to keep it fresh, man. We try to rotate the co-guests. I am the one constant driving the ship, but it's fun, man, it's just like being in the locker room, Joe. So it's easy. It's work, yeah, but like for us, it's fun, man, because we just have great conversations.
And you mentioned that it's like being in the locker room. That's really the feel that you guys give off. And that's, I think, at least what makes the show so incredible in terms of its authenticity. You had a great interview with Jermaine Johnson the other day. And before we dive into that interview itself, how happy were you, first of all, when your Jets, who I think won the draft easily when they took Jermaine Johnson 26th?
Man, elation is the word that comes to mind, right? Because this is a guy that I've been high on for the longest, probably longer than any other analyst, going back to before the Senior Bowl. I mean, I talked to a lot of talent evaluators. They had him as a second, third round pick. And I was like, this guy's not getting out of the first round, right? And then after the Senior Bowl, where you put on a pass rush display, I was like, this guy might not make it out of the top 20, right? But, a lot of talent evaluators had him as a top 10 prospect. And if you look at it as a whole, Joe, because people keep asking me, why do you think Jermaine fell? Why do you think Jermaine fell? I just look at it as this, right? Trayvon Walker went 1 overall, which kind of threw the draft into a tailspin, but there were rumors heading up into the draft that might happen. Mm-hmm. So Aiden Hutchinson obviously fell to number 2. Kayvon Thibodeau went 5. And honestly, for his skill set, I think he went to the best team with the Giants. I know you're Giants. Wink Martindale, right? He's going to blitz the house, play in and play out. He's going to want his corners to be on the island. I just think the less you ask Kayvon Thibodeau to do, the better. One of his skill sets is getting off the ball and winning with speed, and then speed to power. Those are the only 2 things he does on film. So his hand usage has to get a lot better. But in Wink Martindale's system, they're just going to ask him to get on the edge and go. So, I mean, actually, it was probably like a perfect marriage for him going to the Giants at the number 5 spot. And then if you look at it, it was a run on receivers, right? Chris Olave went, Jameson Williams went. The Jets took Garrett Wilson. And then also Jahan Dotson, I believe, went at 16, and Traylon Burks went at 23, if I'm not mistaken. Then Tyler Smith, the offensive lineman, went to the Cowboys from Tulsa. We saw Zion Johnson go from Boston College, interior offensive line. Trevor Penning went to the New Orleans Saints. So from pick 5 to 25, there was not another edge guy taken. So, I mean, to put that into perspective, teams felt like they needed to trade up to get receivers. And we're also seeing a little shift, right? Because usually edge defender was always like the number 1 need on the team, right? Mm-hmm. Guys that can affect and get to the quarterback. Besides getting the quarterback, right, in the top 5, getting an edge rusher who can affect the quarterback essentially was the big thing. Now it seems like guys are putting more precipice on getting young receivers, right? Because if you see what happened with Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill, teams are willing to pay upwards to $25 million more a year for a receiver. So they're like, we'll just go get a younger version and mold them, right? And then we'll just repeat the cycle over and over again. So you saw guys trade up to get receivers. So I think people are like, why did he fall? Well, if put it into perspective, nobody went before him on the edge from pick 5 to 25.
Yeah, so he was still the 4th one taken.
Yeah, so did he essentially fall, or did teams just have other needs, right? So I think you just take a look at that. I think the Jets, and just talking to Robert Saleh, I talk to Robert like once a week, right? Mm-hmm. They honestly, people always use this PR thing like, we've been trying to trade up for him since. No, they literally, legitimately were trying to trade up for Jermaine Johnson from the pick 15 and on, right? They just couldn't get a package that a team was comfortable with to get him until they got to the 26th spot. So Jermaine Johnson to me is the perfect fit in this Robert Saleh defense. So much is predicated off the defensive line creating havoc. And the one thing Saleh says a lot, and his mantra is all gas, no breaks. And that's how Jermaine Johnson plays, right? Elite effort on film. You never have to worry about this guy playing with effort. To me, was the best edge defender against the run. And that's big because the Jets really struggled against the run last year. So I think he's going to be really good in that wide nine, creating havoc over the tight ends. Tight ends aren't going to be able to block him one-on-one, or even on the open side when tackles try to reach him. He just has heavy hands, Joe, and does a good job with his hands and using violence to get off blocks and get to running backs. Then as a pass rusher, he's grown so much since the beginning of the year when he first transferred to Florida State towards the end of the year. And I liken that too because this was his first year starting, right? He didn't really have the opportunity at Georgia. He was playing about under 30% of the snaps at Georgia, where it uptook to 60+% when he went to Florida State. So when you get more reps, you get better. You get to work your craft. So as the year progressed, he got better and better with his hands, started throwing more, pass rush moves. And then the Senior Bowl put on a pass rush display. So honestly, I was ecstatic, when Jermaine went there. And I couldn't wait to get him, on I Am Athlete Tonight. And we actually had the first interview with him before he had his original press conference with the Jets. So it was dope to do that as well.
He's not the only guy you had the first interview with after some big news dropped. If you're just joining us, it's former New York Jet, current host of I Am Athlete Tonight, Douzable, joining me here on Ceraulo Sports Talk. But Lige, you also had the first interview with Hollywood Brown, who of course shocked the world. He was traded. We've been hearing about DK, AJ Brown, Deebo Samuel, all wanting out. Hollywood handled it the right way, kind of just, went to his front office quietly, didn't make a big scene, a big stir on social media. He got his wish. He was sent to Arizona. How do you think, and especially now with the past couple of days, hearing that DeAndre Hopkins is going to be suspended the first 6 weeks, how do you think Hollywood, Kyler, and the Cardinals are going to fare in Hopkins' absence?
Yeah, this was such an interesting interview, right, Joe? Because we were the first to interview him since the trade before his press conference. And I actually wanted to ask him about that. Like, was this something, because I saw it on the Ravens website, right? They said that, Marquise Hollywood Brown asked for a trade, but we hadn't seen that on social media anywhere, right? Mm-hmm. And like you said, I think he did a really good job of, keeping that to himself, letting Lamar Jackson know, letting the team know, and they were able to work out a deal to get him sent essentially where he wanted to go, right? Back with his quarterback from college and Kyler Murray. They were both at the University of Oklahoma. But during the interview, I definitely wanted to press him about that and ask him, not press him, but just ask him like, Marquise, we hadn't really seen any reports on, you potentially asking for a trade yet. The Ravens, put it up on their website that you essentially asked for a trade. So I was like, I'm asking you, was it you that went to them and asked for a trade? And he was, not only did he say yes, Joe, but I thought it was interesting that he said he's actually asked for it the last couple years and it just didn't happen, right? So this is a guy, and so I asked him, I was like, no, well, you're going to Arizona now. DeAndre Hopkins is there. And this is before the suspension and the PEDs situation came out with DeAndre Hopkins. He gets a high target share, right? DeAndre Hopkins is going to get the ball a lot. Was your issue in Baltimore, not getting enough target shares? And he said, no, that was not it. He's like, you go back to my film in college, I never had a high target share, right? But they just knew how to use me, right? He was a big, yards after catch guy, a big over the top guy. He might only had 3 or 4 receptions, but he would go for 120 to 130 yards.
Yeah.
So that was his issue, right? He wasn't worried about the target share. It was just how he was used. And in Baltimore is more so used as a decoy, right? Because of the speed element that he has, they would send him on goals and post routes. And I would have to hold that safety and allow the Baltimore Ravens to run the ball more effectively. So he just wanted to go to a situation where he wasn't worried about his target share, which it most likely will go up now if DeAndre Hopkins is essentially suspended for the first 6 games. But he just wanted to go to a program where he was going to be used properly. And that was his big emphasis. And that's what he wanted to get across in that interview.
And I definitely think, I would hope at least that Cliff Kingsbury knows how to use him. I think Kyler, of course, will get the ball to him plenty. But now if you look at the Ravens, I mean, they had a phenomenal draft. I said that the Jets were the winners. The Ravens are right there with them.
Hey, 3 things are certain, Joe. Death, taxes, and the Ravens are going to have a good draft.
Yes, sir.
Every single year, they're going to have a good draft. That's just what they do.
And it wasn't just Ozzie Newsome. I mean, the Newsome to DeCosta flow has just been absolutely seamless. It's Baltimore is just the poster child for continuity when it comes to drafting in the NFL. But they do still have a glaring hole in their roster. And with the Hollywood Brown trade, it is that wide receiver room. So, you've got 4 big names still out there in free agency: T.Y., Julio, Odell, and Juice. What's Baltimore going to do to fill out that receiver room? Because I don't believe that, Devin Duvernay is a suitable number 2.
I mean, do they have an issue though? I mean, the Baltimore Ravens have always been better when they've been in 12 and 13 personnel, Joe. They're going to run the ball. They know their identity and they're going to stick to it. And I think that's one of the reasons why Marquise Hollywood Brown wanted to leave. I believe Rashad Bateman slides in perfectly where Hollywood Brown is. I feel like he can do some of the similar things he was doing. And I think Duvernay can step up and be a viable number 2. Now, they did sign, I believe, a lot of undrafted free agents, and that's normally what they do, right? They sign late. They either pick late receivers besides the Bateman pick. They usually pick late receiver. And Hollywood Brown was the first round pick as well, too. But they get guys like Duvernay late in the draft, or they get undrafted free agents. And they're like the number 2 or 3 or 4 receiver for them, right? And they play special teams. They're tough guys. But, you saw what they did in the draft. What they do? They drafted 2 more tight ends. They got Nick Boyle coming back, and they have one of the best, if not best, tight end in football from last year, coming back as well. So this is a team that routinely goes 13 personnel, which is 3 tight ends on the field, or 12 personnel. So, Isaiah likely gives him a different skill set. He's more of an H-back, a guy that's more of a receiving threat. But Charlie Kolar from Iowa State is a really good inline blocker, and he can be a guy that can also stretch teams down the seam. So Mark Andrews, to me, last year was the best tight end in football. He's coming back. Boyle comes back, right? He was injured, and that was massive. I think him not being there wasn't talked about enough, because he does so many different things for the Baltimore Ravens. So he comes back from injury. And now you got, Charlie Kolar at the tight end position, and then Isaiah Likely, a move guy that you can move around and even split out. And you can maybe even go 13 personnel with having him stretch out as a receiver, because he has that skill set. Mm-hmm. So that the Baltimore Ravens are never a team that's just going to throw the ball down the field a million times, right? They're going to run the ball, play action pass, you take their shots, but they're going to kill you down the seams with tight ends. And, Lamar Jackson's going to get the ball in his hands quick, but they're going to start first and foremost with running the ball. Hence why they took Tyler Linderbaum in the first round. He just reminds me of a Raven, right? This is a guy
right.
That's tough, rugged, is going to play through the echo of the whistle. And then Daniel Faalele, right? This is a guy from Minnesota, 6'8", almost 380 pounds. Kind of reminds me of a guy they took a few years ago in Orlando Brown, and it panned out really well. A lot of people gave them gruff about taking Orlando Brown, I believe, in the 3rd round because of the weight and everything, but he just fit perfectly in with the Ravens system, moved over to left tackle. They end up getting franchise tagged and traded, and now he's franchise tagged with the Kansas City Chiefs and will probably get a big payday. So the Ravens just know what they're doing. Like, they understand the type of player they want to bring in the building, right? And, even with Kyle Hamilton, he kind of reminds me of a Raven too, a guy that's multiple on defense. They're going to love him. New defensive coordinator Mike McDonald is going to have a field day moving him around as a chess piece on defense. And, even getting David Ojabo in the 2nd round. Like, this guy had 1st round talent, tears his Achilles, but that's a perfect pairing mate to, Odafe Oye on the other side. So, like, they just know how to draft, man. I mean, the Ravens just have the handbook on drafting players and drafting a specific player for their system.
Yeah, they're going to be great this year. Look, people are too quick to forget this team was once 8-3 last season. They're going to be just fine. Their secondary was battered by injuries. Nick Boyle was a huge shot. Obviously, Lamar went down. They had, a revolving door of running backs. They're going to be just fine. Leger, thank you so much for the time, my man. I appreciate you joining the show. Of
course. Thanks for having me.
Former New York Jet, current host of I Am Athlete Tonight, Leger Douzable. We'll be right back with my final word on this episode of Ceraulo Sports Talk.